Hi, I'm Rick Bennett, and I decided to commemorate September 11th by taking Christopher Lochhead's advice and sharing some of my great failures. Namely, there are 13 ads that got me fired. And the reason I'm doing this on September 11th is the last ad I'm going to show you was directly related to that event. And maybe I can bring out what I learned from these interesting experiences. Now, the first 6 ads got me fired for all the right reasons. Namely, the companies that I was advertising for got acquired by bigger companies who had their own marketing communications people and didn't need a wild man advertising agency. The first one was Solomon Design Associates, or SDA. One of the great headlines I ever wrote is we're routing the little dips and putting them in their places. This is a place and route ad for a semiconductor company. They were acquired by Cadence and no longer needed me. Now, the second ad was much more recently. It was Big Fix, and we ran an ad wishing Symantec a happy birthday, calling them dinosaurs. Within a few weeks of this ad running, Symantec was purchased by IBM. Now, the third ad was one of my favorites because it was a billboard we ran out inside Oracle. And it was originally patterned after the Quentin Tarantino movies Kill Bill. In fact, the headline was Kill Bill, and then the billboard company said, no, we can't do that. Looks like you're putting a hit out on Bill Gates. We ran it for Intralinks. I bought my stock at 70 cents a share, and they were acquired by a private equity firm and later went public, and I got $37 a share for my stock out of Intralinks. Very interesting approach. The next was Learn.com. Interesting. It was how to get invited to the White House. Well, not only did they get a lot of heat from the White House, but they were acquired by Oracle. Now, the next ad was Never Run. A couple of venture capital buddies of mine, angel investors in Silicon Valley, had me do this ad for a company called Jungle E. And I loved it. It was how to play Monopoly for real. And it was back in the time when Microsoft was getting hit by lawsuits, and they absolutely didn't want to run it. But the idea of a good ad is that it can completely encapsulate the selling proposition of a company. And Play Monopoly for Real was so impressive that Jungle E was acquired by Amazon for $560 million. And the last ad was, it also never ran, but shortly after I was doing the ads for Forte Software, they were acquired by Sun Microsystems. Interesting anecdote, Chuck U. Phillips. Chuck Phillips at that time was an analyst for Morgan Stanley, and his phone number was 212 ... Chuck, call Chuck. Well, I couldn't resist. Chuck ran an ad. Chuck ran an opinion against Forte, which they helped take public, and so I proposed that we run an ad to Chuck U. Phillips. They told me, Forte told me to please destroy the ad and never bring it up again because they did not want to offend Chuck Phillips. Interestingly, later I sent the ad to Chuck Phillips, and subsequently he joined Oracle, and he always insists on being called Charles Phillips now that he's with Infor. I guess Chuck U. Phillips was an emotional event for him. Now, the next 7 ads got me fired. And no doubt about it, I'll have to say what I learned. The first, Capterra asked me to do some ads for them where they have a software references, competitive pricing, and so forth. I've always had a problem with Gartner. I felt that they were in the protection racket. You pay them the money, they do you, put you on their charts and cover you in their research. And so I suggested we ran this ad in the airports near the Capterra headquarters. And it says basically, oh, you're here to pay your protection money to Gartner. That was a little bit too warlike for Capterra, and never heard from them again. The second ad that got me fired was trying to make lightning strike twice. The first time I was very successful. There was a Linux convention, and Linux Care had me run an ad, and I ran in a local edition of the Wall Street Journal. And since it was for Linux, I ran an ad, Linus Torvalds for president. Well, what was interesting is the Linux Care took over the whole show, because Linus Torvalds showed up and he spent most of his time at the show, at their booth, signing copies of the ad. So I figured, man, that was cool. Another company years later called Reachable asked me to run an ad for Reachable asked me to run an ad for them at the Salesforce conference. And so I naturally said, hey, let's run a Mark Benioff for president ad. Problem was that Mark Benioff, everybody at the show, we ran this in USA Today, they came up and asked Mark, hey, you're running for president. He was a little irritated with them and irritated with Reachable. And Reachable in turn got irritated with me. This next ad, a couple of real smart college kids wanted to have a Dollar Shave Club ad for essentially a subscription to portable wipes that businessmen could carry with them on the airplane when they took business trips. I thought I came up with a great concept for them using Kim Jong-un as the one of their reference customers for their wipes. And they didn't think that was quite funny at all, and nothing ever happened with those guys. They are still in business. If you care for a subscription version of getting wipes on a monthly basis to take on trips so you don't have skid marks in your shorts, you might give these guys a call. But valet. Then comes another great irony of my life. Scott Smith wanted to run for president back in 1916. Well, we know that was a very crowded market, and Donald Trump had it pretty well nailed. I've told Scott since that he came up with a wonderful idea, and that it might even work for this Democrat field that's running by jigging the financial systems. We came up with a zero DDT, zero deficit, zero national debt, and zero taxes, DDT. And it's meant eliminating the Federal Reserve System and doing something very interesting with our money supply. Scott is one smart guy. We ran this ad in the Wall Street Journal, and unfortunately, it didn't generate what we hoped it would. And of course, the 2016 election was history. This could be a lesson for the Democrats coming out in 2020. Now, the next ad is another one of my pet issues, namely animal testing for cosmetics. One of my buddies, Ed DeCastro, was president of Data General. And in fact, he hired me to Data General to be manager of special projects. One of the special projects was chairing the committee that passed Proposition 2.5 in Massachusetts. That's the tax limitation initiative. And I also did a lot of work. Data General hired me to do their advertising for their technical products division. So when Ed has a Boulder, Colorado company dealing with chemicals that eliminate animal testing, I said, this is a really cool idea. And I came up with this ad concept for them. I'm 50 years old, but I look as good as I ever did. It just costs more money. and I'm grateful not to have animal testing as part of my cosmetic regime. Looked good. The next ad, there was a Rick Bennett, same name, and he saw that I had a website and I did advertising, and he was running for political office in Texas. Now, he also had a church that he was a minister of. This gave me a little bit of heartburn because as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I am reluctant to promote another religion. However, I came up with an idea for him, and a great billboard I suggested he run. I guaranteed it would get him crucified. They would put little nail gun nails in his hands and nail him to a fence in Texas somewhere. I said, I've had my collarbone broken this side 3 times, this one twice on bike accidents. And I said, look, you'll be in shock. You won't hurt as bad as you think you might hurt. And they'll pull you out and you can walk around and show the crucifixion signs you've had. And I said, the headline read, preaching is like sex. If you accept money for it, you're a harlot. You know, the LDS friends of mine agree that you shouldn't be a paid clergy. He liked this ad, but he didn't quite have guts enough to run it, and his supporters in the area didn't feel like paying for the billboard. Now the last ad, the one that got me fired. I have a friend who runs the Wendover Airfield in Wendover, Utah. Now, Wendover, Utah is the same town as Wendover, Nevada, just separated by a state line. In Nevada, it's very glitzy and has a lot of lights and casinos. In Wendover, Utah, they don't have gambling, and therefore you're going to find a lot of cars up on blocks in the front yard. And they wanted to promote tourism to go to the Wendover Airfield in Wendover, Utah. Well, this was slightly after September in 2011, and I proposed that we have a survey, and the billboard would read, fill out the survey whether or not we should nuke Mecca, because we loaded the atomic bombs for the Nagasaki and Hiroshima attacks in Wendover Airfield in Wendover, Utah. A piece of history for you. This was a good friend of mine, and we haven't spoken since. He was badly shocked. Now, what have I learned from my failures? Well, I need to watch my personal hot buttons. Just because I didn't like Gartner, it would have set their hair on fire had this ad run. Similarly, I didn't like animal testing. And animal testing, for whatever reason, didn't turn on Ed DeCastro at Xenometrics, the company that does those drugs, the chemicals for animal testing. And of course, at that time, my hot-headedness over the 9/11 incident was probably not conducive to a good tourism ad. They were kind of afraid, I suspect, that a Yugo full of plastic explosive might be driven into Wendover, Nevada. So those are my successes and my failures. 13 ads that got me fired. This isn't notorious self-promotion that you normally see on LinkedIn, but I figured I'd tell Christopher Lockhead that I did run an ad. I did run a video on the ads that got me fired. Here you go, Christopher. Thank you.